Welcome to the Crazy Bone Podcast. Today we have something really special, and this is all being brought to you by Record Rack Deer Feeds. Record Rack has set us up with someone really cool. My co-host Leo Martinez and I are here with Brian Gilroy, the owner of Wildpartners, and we're located right now in Pearsall, Texas at one of his beautiful ranches. And this place, I can't even begin to describe it, and the animals are amazing. But before I ramble on too much, I'm going to get a little background from Brian and really figure out what's going on here and why it's going on. Brian, you showed us some beautiful animals today, and I mean, I'm blown away at some of the prices. You were telling me, oh, that's worth this, and this, and this, and I had no idea. I mean, obviously the exotics have been in Texas for umpteen years, but where did all this stem from? I mean, why exotics? Why Texas? Where did all this come from?
You know, it's a really interesting story. People have this idea that, you know, these oil barons from Texas are importing animals from all over Africa and bringing them and putting them out on their ranch. And
yeah,
it's a logical thought to think that, but the reality is that these animals originate from zoos. So when you go to Dallas Zoo or Houston Zoo or any other public city zoo that you're going to, you're looking at these animals and you see the baby born, and you don't really think much about the fact that they have no space for a herd of animals. But everybody wants to see a baby. And so as these zoos are breeding animals and producing offspring, they ultimately end up with no space, but they have animals, so they've got to do something with them. And so really kind of dating back to the 1920s and then really catapulting in the 1950s and 60s, zoos all across America have been sending animals to Texas. They end up on private ranches, and as the result of this really small crop that's kind of started with the zoos, Texans have turned them into really large populations.
Why Texas? Is it because our
private property?
Yeah, is it the amount of land we have, or is it like the landscape is closely related to Africa, which is where most of these animals come from?
You know, this was really an experiment when it started. Neil Guy were brought to the King Ranch as a way to kind of as a way to deal with the fluctuations in cattle and other livestock that they were breeding. Then later in kind of the 50s and 60s, when they started ending up in the hill country, there was kind of an idea about, let's see how these really rare endangered animals do here in Texas. And what they did discover is that the climate that we're dealing with here, it's optimal. I mean, we have a mild climate. It does get somewhat cold, as we all saw here a few weeks ago, and it gets hot. But
right.
Yet, as a general rule, when you look at Texas as a whole, East Texas is extremely humid and lots of dirt and lots of dense vegetation. West Texas is very arid and it's a desert. And South Texas, you know, you have coastal plains and then you've got brush country. And then obviously we've got the hill country. So we're dealing with a lot of different environments. And so certain animals do really well in each individual area. But as a whole, Texas is really a suitable place for a lot of the species that we breed here. I mean, there are some species, for example, like a polar bear that's not going to do well in Texas, and you don't see any.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're talking about cervids and antelope, there's really not a region of Texas where these animals are not going to do well and thrive.
Wow. Now, speaking of all the different areas of Texas, we're in Pearsall now, but this isn't your only place. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we have a place in Mountain Home, which is about 15 minutes outside of Kerrville. We have another place in Pettis, which is, you know, about 25 minutes from Beeville, which is kind of in the coastal plains.
Okay.
And then we just picked up another property that's just outside Carrizo Springs, in between Carrizo and the Mexican border.
Wow.
So let me ask you something real quick. So you have these different ranches, and like you said, one's in the coastal plains, Carrizo Springs obviously in the brush country. Do you take certain animals to certain ranches, or do you just say, okay, we have property that we need to put some animals on, or, you know, is there certain animals, I guess, and I know you just said they do well everywhere, but is using different ranches for different projects?
So the way that our company works is that we both work with landowners in Texas, but our breeding programs are basically investments that each one is its own separate investment group. And so on this ranch, for example, we have 3 different investment groups that have animals. So this ranch is chopped up into pieces and the animals are housed based on who owns them. So there's not any mixing of the animals, which is the reason you see all the fences here, okay? So we saw 3 different groups of sable today.
Right.
Well, each group is owned by a different group of people.
Okay.
Okay, so when we're looking for property, for example, you know, we've learned a little bit as we went along. The hill country, while it is the epicenter for exotics, and exotics have done well there, the fact is, it is not the optimum place to raise animals. There's no grass, there's no dirt, it's rock, you know, but for some reason the animals have done pretty well there. But when you start getting here into South Texas, not only is the temperature more mild, but this ranch has got 2 water wells on it that enable us to grow all the feed that we need. And because we're in brush country, we've got browse coming out our ears. So really what we look for in a property is something that's going to be, let's just say, all-encompassing, that fits the mold of 40 species or so that we raise that are high-valued animals. So what we're looking for is water, the ability to grow crops, and just natural vegetation, good grass and good browse. And so, you know, could we put certain animals in Carrizo Springs, for example, and raise them there that maybe are not most suited to be there? Sure. But that's not really what our goal is. Our goal is to practice the best husbandry possible, because that's our goal is reproduction. You know, we're trying to be at 90% or better. So if I take animals that are kind of accustomed to a cold climate and I put them in Carrizo Springs, the odds of me seeing 90% production is pretty low.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
It does. It's amazing that when you explain it like that, we're like,
okay.
I mean,
now
it
we
seems so
understand.
basic.
You know, it's really surprised me, to be very honest with you. There's some basic practices related to livestock that I'm equally guilty of, and it's when I got into this business, like not all, but like a lot of other landowners, you just buy this smorgasbord of animals and you throw them in a pasture and you don't think about what the carrying capacity of your land is. You don't think about that this is an animal from Asia and this is an animal from Africa and this is an animal from Europe, and these animals, they don't like each other. They have nothing to do with each other. They've never, in fact, seen each other before, and suddenly I'm throwing them all into the same apartment and they're having to figure out how to sort it out. And so, you know, you take for example, another great example is Nilgai from down in the King Ranch. You know, these are animals that are not eating out of a feeder. They're living on natural grass that grows in the valley. Well, when you take that animal and you drag it up to Mountain Home and you turn it out in the hill country, there's no grass. That animal doesn't know how to eat out of a feeder. So you end up with an animal that starves. And so, you know, there's some just basic husbandry practices that, from what I can say, for decades, people have failed to really think about, because you get so excited. You know? A broker calls you with a zebra and you're like, yes. And then they call you with a Himalayan tar and you say, yes.
We'll take it.
You know, and then they call you with a Markhor and yes. And so, you know, you get caught up in the moment of collecting. And you forget that you've got this piece of ground that Mother Nature is in charge of, and suddenly you look up and you've got this massive parasite outbreak, and you created it. You created it with mismanagement. So I am pleased to see that the industry is responding to the call of better husbandry. You know, it certainly is something that's going to have an impact on the industry over the next couple of decades. As people start using better husbandry, I think we're going to see reproduction rates going up and less death loss.
Well, and that brings another thing to my mind when you're talking about the husbandry, and because when we do, you know, other podcasts, hunting and stuff, we always talk about carrying capacity and what can the land do, you know, what can it hold, because we're trying to grow the healthiest animals. I don't think people realize how much care goes into these animals and how much you care about it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you say that. So one of the things that I realized, and it's really the foundation of what created Wildpartners, is that the way this industry has worked for the last several decades is that you have a group of people that are brokers, okay, that are buying animals and then reselling them. They're trading animals is basically what they're doing. And then you have Me, guy from San Antonio, never owned a ranch before. My background's in oil and gas and finance. And I've got these 12 people that are offering animals to me. And I want them. I say, yeah. Well, those people don't particularly have an interest in whether my land is managed properly.
That's right.
No.
They don't particularly have an interest in whether or not I'm doing the right thing for this particular group of animals. They're just trying to sell their product,
Sure,
okay?
sure.
And so we actually just started another company called Wildlife Ranch Solutions. And what Wildlife Ranch Solutions does is we're taking the base of knowledge that we've acquired over the last 8 or 9 years, and we're going out and we're offering consulting to landowners. So rather than just buying this smorgasbord of animals, let's try to create a template for what we're going to live by based upon your land and based upon the region of Texas that you're in.
Yep.
So if you're in, let's just say, Far East Texas, kudu don't really like living in Far East
Yeah,
Texas.
so you're taking animals that fit.
Yeah, sable don't
Yeah.
particularly like living there. And so there are certain animals that will do really well there.
Right.
And so by trying to put together a package of recommendations, our goal is, one is to build a business, but the other one is that we do care, and we care about not just our business and our animals, but we care about the industry.
Right.
I want to see other landowners succeed, because the more confident a landowner is with what he's doing, the more likely that landowner is to invest more in what he's doing on his land. And with the cost of these animals these days, it's not a small bite.
Sure.
So if you don't go in with your eyes wide open with some degree of consideration for the land and the animals, the downside is huge.
Yeah.
You can wipe out 15 or 20 sable in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And with sable costing 30 to 40 grand,
Yep.
that's a painful loss.
It is.
You know, so
is.
Yeah.
caring does matter, but thoughtfulness, I think, is more
It's
important.
More so important. And I've met your team, and they're incredible. You know, you've got a fantastic team. You know, Brian Henderson and Kevin, and you know the guys. I've met the guys in Pettis, and you've put a pretty fantastic team together.
You know, it's. I was actually just talking about this with someone the other day. You know, we went through this cold snap, and
That was brutal.
watching all these people that work for Wildlife Partners come together, putting in 20 hours a day to protect these animals that they don't even own.
Yeah.
You know, that they have this huge passion to make sure that they're doing the right thing by these animals that live on these ranches. It is something that we don't take lightly. We appreciate it greatly.
I noticed earlier we drove up on a group of
Sable.
and they looked as healthy as could be, and I thought it was really cool because everything's so calm. And we got really close to them. I'm like, man, it's so cool, taking pictures and videos and stuff. And then we drove off, and you got on the phone. We were going to another pasture, and you got on the phone, and you said, hey, get over there and check on those sable in yada, yada, yada pasture. I'm not sure, but something looks funny. Just go over there, get an eye on them, double check them. So, I mean, it was like as soon as you saw something, and it may be nothing. Because in our eyes, I mean, they looked as healthy as can be. And I mean, we know nothing about sable, but we're around a lot of animals. So I feel like we can kind of clue in on a sick animal or something like that. But you picked up on just maybe one little thing and instantly was like, get on it.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm on my way.
You know, I've learned a lot from Kevin, you know, who came here from Africa, and he's helped us a lot. And he had a couple of sayings that he shared with me, and one of them is that it's the footsteps of the farmer that fertilize the soil, and it is the eye of the stockman that fattens the beast. And the moral of those two things are, if you're not out walking around, you're probably not seeing what you need to see. You've got to walk these.
Sure.
You've got to walk this land. You can't drive around on your buggy. You got to get out and walk, and you need to put your eyes on these animals as often as you
A lot,
can.
yeah.
And you know, I would equate it to, you know, you and I may bump into somebody in the grocery store that has a set of twins, and we can't tell them apart.
Right.
But the parents look at them and they don't look even alike. You know, they see these huge differences. Well, when your eyes are on these animals every day and you're looking at them, you can see just the slightest difference in their eyes. You can see the slightest difference in their coat. You can tell that the way that they're walking is different.
Yeah.
And it's like with your pet at home. You can tell when your pet doesn't feel well. I mean, anybody that's got a bird dog that they put a lot of time and effort into, you can tell when your dog's not doing good. And so when I saw those sable, I just noticed that they, to me, look a little parasitic, which would be expected this time of year with all the new growth coming up. It's highly probable that they're going to pick up some parasites right now.
And it's not a big deal.
You know, it can be a big deal. If you
Right.
don't catch it quick, it can be a big deal. And
Exactly.
so you don't want to just go blanket give, wormer to these animals. You want to make sure that they do in fact have parasites. And so we're going to take a fecal sample,
Fecal
which they
sample.
actually did yesterday. That's what he told me when I talked to him. They took a sample yesterday. They'll have the results back on that today, and then we'll go and target worm with the dart gun.
Right.
And so, look, you would never drive up to the mall in a Ferrari with a bag of $50,000 sitting next to you. Leave your keys on the seat and the bag of money on the seat with your windows down and go in the mall. You'd never do that.
Yeah.
And you have to protect these assets. You've got to protect these things. Just a little black buck.
Little
there.
black buck,
You've
yeah,
got to protect these things, and we have an obligation to the people that have invested with us to take care of these animals.
best as you can.
It is an obligation. It's not just a chore. It's not just a passion. We have an obligation, and so
Well, I question, is it even so much that as just your love and care for these animals, and you want them to do well. You want these animals to do as well as possible.
Look, I've said this on many interviews, and I'll say it again. Brian Gilroy is a capitalist. He is. He's a capitalist, okay? And I wouldn't have started this company if I was not a capitalist. So if you're a capitalist and you're in the business of dealing with living creatures, you would be an idiot to not care.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm not,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
I'm not a bleeding heart from the standpoint of, I have this emotional connection and investment in these animals, and that I have this endearing love for them. I value life. I value that I have a fence here. So we're God. We're responsible for these animals. We put them in a box, and you have to take care of them. And so, my care does stem from, it does stem from a love for life. But this is very different than my little 4-pound Pomeranian. I got a little 4-pound Pomeranian, and that little guy kicks the bucket, and I'm going to be having tears for a week. It's very different with my little dog than it is with these animals. This is a business.
Yes,
sure.
This is a business.
Yep.
And so I care deeply about making sure that we are successful for the people that have invested with our company
Right.
and that own these animals. And we're dealing with life. And so when you're dealing with life, there's a certain degree of care that you have to have related to life. Caring for a life is different than caring for a bar of gold. It's not the same.
Sure.
You have to put more heart into it. And so maybe it looks like I have this emotional passion. It's no different. A hunter goes and takes a life and then cries. I shot a doll sheep on top of a mountain in Alaska, and then I cried like a baby. So it's like, I just took the life of this sheep, but there I am crying. So it's like, I care.
Sure.
But it's just, caring is
There's a lot of levels.
there's a lot of levels to it. And as it relates to this, I have an enormous responsibility between these 4 properties to take care of tens of millions of dollars worth of animals for people that have entrusted us to do so.
To do so, yep.
And so my care revolves around the responsibility that we have taken on as a company and as individuals. It's not about that I just have this bleeding heart of love, and I'm just, I mean,
Well,
it's,
no, I
look,
I
you get the point.
appreciate and respect your honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Heck
it's
yeah.
it's just,
It's a business.
I mean,
Yeah.
look, I talking about knowing animals. Okay, so I can have a group of animals in a pen, and I need to get these animals into a barn, and these are wild animals. These are not animals that are trained. Okay, well, I've sat in a tree stand for thousands of hours with a bow, waiting on a deer to come in or waiting on another animal to come in. I mean, it took me 2 years to kill an axis deer with a bow. And it wasn't for a lack of sitting.
Yeah.
And they're just difficult to hunt. And what happens is that when you sit in a tree for all those hours, or in a blind for all those hours, you watch animal behavior. And you watch how they act, and you watch the way they think, and you watch the fight or flight instinct, and you know when their eyes are telling you the game is about to start. You can see it. You can see if you sit enough hours, you can see that animal is relaxed, or you can see that animal is about to fly.
Yeah.
And so I've taken my experience from hunting, and I've applied it to what I'm doing as a rancher. I can look at that animal and I can tell you that animal is happy or not.
Yeah.
I can look at that animal and tell you whether it's doing well or whether it's not.
Yeah.
And it's because I sat in a tree for thousands of hours trying to get them, you know? and so it's just, you can take this experience of hunting and being a hunter, and it lends itself very well to being a rancher. And I think all of that revolves around care, you know?
Speaking of life and being able to read animals, you have a particular species, not on this ranch, that could take your life.
Yeah.
And is very hard to read. And I've heard them referred to as Black Death.
Yeah.
And I've heard through the grapevine, and I meant to ask you about this earlier, but we'll just ask right now. Do you own the largest breeding herd of Cape buffalo outside of South Africa?
So there's another herd here in Texas. I don't know how big it is, okay? There's nobody that seems to have any numbers on how big it is. Our herd is north of 50 head. There's probably in the entire U.S. maybe 200, maybe 220 Cape buffalo in the U.S. So, you know, do I want the label of having the largest herd? I mean,
sounds cool.
It sounds kind of cool, you know. At the end of the day, you know, the economics of it is what really sounds cool to me.
Yeah.
You know, this has been a remarkable investment. It's been unbelievable, quite honestly, and watching this develop over the last 4 years. We acquired our first group of Cape buffalo in 2017, and maybe in 2016, but watching this over a period of the last 4 or 5 years kind of develop into a real market it's been pretty shocking, honestly.
That seems so sketchy, though.
You know, did you know that one Cape buffalo in South Africa sold for $12 million? One bull.
It's worth being sketchy.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he sold as a breeder.
He was a breeder. So
Yeah.
for reference, to give you some perspective, so, you know, the first group of Cape buffalo I bought 3 males and 3 females, and we paid $500,000 for that group. The next group that we bought males at $10,000, and we bought heifers for $60 and mature cows for $90. At an auction about a week and a half ago, one pair of yearling Cape buffaloes sold for $440,000 for one pair of animals that are
one female,
yearling,
one male,
that are about
and younger animals.
Yearlings.
They were
about a
They were
year old,
yearlings.
about a year old yearlings, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Immature animals.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the development over the last several years, as people become more aware that these animals do exist in Texas, the demand for them is growing. And
What is causing that demand? What's causing those values?
you know, that's a great question, and I think there's a couple of things that have really driven it, okay? Basic supply-demand economics is the core of any model as it relates to moving a market, okay? When supply is short and demand is high, you're going to see price increases, okay?
I see that for a consumable good, but these animals aren't being hunted in Texas.
So, you know, when you look at a racehorse, racehorses don't get hunted. Nobody's shooting racehorses, okay? Right? Nobody's shooting racehorses. So nobody says, well, what's the end game for the racehorse? Dog food, you know? So people don't ask that question. And the reason they don't ask that question is because there's this brotherly love, this relationship between man and horse. And so, we buy horses and we go do team roping, or we buy horses and we take them and we race them in a horse race, a Kentucky Derby, whatever it is. People don't say, well, what's the end game for that horse? They don't say that. The end game for the horse is you love the horse and you have some emotional connection, and maybe there's
A few moments later.
Okay, we had a slight technical difficulty. Batteries are a finicky thing. But I was just going to ask Brian, what is driving the demand and the price for these animals just through the roof? I mean, you're saying that Cape Buffalo are selling for $500,000 for a pair that aren't even old enough to breed yet. I mean, that blows my mind.
There's been a real transition in the industry just over the last, let's just say, 5 or 8 years. And I think that, any product is really driven by basic supply demand. And there's an imbalance today between what's available to buy and the volume of people that want to buy it. Okay, so you have a basic supply demand factor that's in play. So I think one of the things that is happening is that demand has skyrocketed. And I think the reason we're seeing the skyrocketing demand is there's been a lot of education that's gone on within the industry in the last 5 or 8 years. And so
it seems like you're responsible for quite a bit of that. I mean, not to pat you on the back or toot your horn, but I mean, it really does seem that way.
It's an awkward feeling to have people say that to me. I didn't necessarily set out with that ambition. I guess maybe in the back of my mind I did, but whether we did or didn't, it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is that we've spent a lot of time trying to educate people about things other than just, hey, this is cool and it's fun.
Yeah.
The fact is that what I think most people never really realized is that these animals are 100% tax deductible. And so if I'm a guy and I own a construction company somewhere, and I'm making a lot of money, the IRS is taking my money. That's what they're doing. They're taking 40%. They're taking 40% of everything I make. Okay, and I have a choice. I can find things to do that are tax deductible, which those are very limited. You can invest more in your company, yeah, or you can take your ranch and you can turn your ranch into a breeding facility. And if you do that by buying non-native animals as a breeding business, those animals are tax deductible. So if I go out and spend $500,000, 37.5% of that money is coming from Uncle Sam. I don't have to give it to Uncle Sam. I don't have to pay that tax. And so as we've educated buyers about the tax aspects of owning exotic wildlife, and we've also offered them a revenue stream, because you can't get the write-off if you don't have an actual business that produces income.
At some
and
point,
so, yeah, so we come in and we buy all their offspring. So every 6 months or 9 months or a year, whatever the number is, we will come in and in one day, we buy all their production. So 365 days in a year, rather than selling hunts or working with an outfitter and having people coming in and out every weekend, they take one day, we show up with our helicopter, we fly and we catch everything that we need to get, and they get a check for 100 or 200 or 400 grand, and then we leave, and then they've got their ranch for the rest of the year. But yet they actually have a business. It's like you have this wonderful thing that makes you feel good, that your kids love and your wife loves and you get to brag about and your friends love, but your revenue all comes in one day. And it's really an ideal setup for someone that has a vacation property that is not producing any financial benefit. So we've educated real estate agents about this. We've educated landowners. We speak at various events. And I think that what we're seeing is demand is dramatically increasing because people are not looking at this just as a hobby anymore. They're looking at it as a viable investment.
Well, and one of the great things too is with the people you deal with, it doesn't have to be 1,000 acres. They don't need 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 acres. You can have 200 acres, 100 acres, and say, hey, Brian, we want 4 animals. And they can come in and do their deal, and then their population stays the same because you're buying the babies back.
Yeah.
That's great.
We have customers that have 30 acres.
Yeah, yeah.
And on 30 acres, you could raise $1 million worth of animals.
Sure.
I mean, it's
But really?
No, you're right.
It's great.
That's not the way my head works.
Right, and the small property, it's a great. I hadn't even thought about it. When you just mentioned, well, we talked to the real estate guys, I'm like, well, that's genius. That's great.
Look,
Heck yeah.
I'll give you a great example, okay? So let's just say that I go into, we'll just call it South Texas somewhere, and I buy 200 acres, and I pay $4,000 an acre.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about $800,000, okay, to buy the property. If you put 20% down, okay, so you're going to have 160, whatever 20% of 800 is, $160,000 down, something like that. And you've got a mortgage that's going to be $3,500 a month. So I need to make $3,500 a month in income in order to be able to make my payment on this property. Okay. Well, if I go out and I buy non-native game is going to generate somewhere in the range of 40 to 50% income per year, give or take. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I buy a piece of property that's got good grass and good browse and good water, I don't even have to feed.
Right.
I don't have to. I treat this just like a cow farmer would, okay? So let's say that I buy sable, and today, we'll say the price for a sable is 45 grand, okay? So if I buy sable, and I buy, we'll just call it 10 sable, I got 450 grand out of pocket, but I'm gonna have 8 babies every year. So those 8 babies that I have every year, okay, not only am I getting a tax write-off on the 450, so I've only got about, we'll call it 300,000 in them. So I get a baby out of 8 of them, we'll say, 4 males and 4 females. And let's say I get 30,000 on the females. Let's say I get 4,000 on the males. So I get 16,000 and 120,000. That's $136,000 a year of income, okay, that I get out of my sable. Well, my mortgage and my property tax on that property is only about 50 grand a year. So my sable are paying my mortgage.
Right.
And it's, even with the sable paying my mortgage, it still is only going to take me 3 years to get all my money back.
And you still have
I own the
sable.
land, I own the land, and I own the sable.
You have the factory, yeah.
Yeah, so the animals are paying for the ranch.
Yeah.
The ranch isn't costing any money. The ranch is paid for as the result of, I bought this land, I mortgaged it, I take this investment capital, I buy these animals, I get a tax deduction, but then the income from those animals pays the mortgage and it recovers all my money in a period of 3 years. So, you know, and I could list 20 species you could do that with.
Yeah.
And all of your expenses are tax write-offs. I mean, your side-by-sides that you run around on, your feed, which has got to be
Well, because it turns
huge.
into a business.
Right.
Like you said, now you're a business that you can.
Like you said, your fencing is all tax deductible
So-
if you
so-
do it that way.
So when your ranch is set up as a breeding facility, okay, everything you do on that ranch as it relates to what you're doing for breeding is tax deductible. Your fences, your feed, your employees, your buggies, the stands that you need to be able to sit in so you can watch your breeding herds, those stands are all tax deductible. You know, the trapper that's coming in to get rid of the coyotes and the bobcat is tax deductible.
Right.
The bobcat that you need to be able to go out and clear brush is
Right.
tax deductible.
Right.
All of it is tax deductible. The work truck, you know, the new Ram Longhorn is tax deductible.
Yeah.
All of it, yeah, it's all tax deductible because you've got a breeding facility,
Yeah.
you know, and so your vacation property that you've been going to and hanging out with, that's been a financial burden,
All of a
suddenly is now carrying its own weight. You know, it's carrying its own weight as the result of exotic wildlife.
That's too cool. Now
It is.
I'm trying to think of like, damn, where can I get some money? Because I don't have any, but I'm like, where can I get just a little bit just to get started?
You know, look, it's no secret that in the deer breeding business, there's been a lot of money made. People made a lot of money in deer breeding.
A few select people.
There have been people that have made money. Not everybody.
No.
Right.
Okay, and I'll tell you,
I'm one of them.
not everybody in the
hasn't.
wildlife business makes money. Okay, but if you run this like a business, you run it like a business, and you treat it like a business, it's not hard to make money doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just give you kind of some examples for reference sake, okay? The first year that we started Wildpartners, in 2016, okay, we did 10 million in revenue in about 8 months. The second year we were in business, we did a little over 13 million. The third year, we were going through some growing pains. We scaled things back. We did about 10 million. Our fourth year, we did 14 million. Last year, our 5th year in business, we did 20 million in revenue. And this year we'll do probably close to 25. And all we do is sell animals. Wow. So our business is we sell animals. This is all driven by selling animals.
You buy and sell.
Well, you don't have a product if you're not making one.
Right.
So if you're a manufacturer, you have to buy raw material and machines, and then you got to crank out that machine.
Get the end product.
You got to make a product. So the way
so you have to buy your machinery, aka a male and a female.
That's correct. So we go out, we buy business equipment. That is what livestock is designated as under the IRS code. This is all business equipment. So under Section 179, this is business equipment. That's what it is. So we buy equipment and we produce a product.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We go out, we buy animals, and then we sell them. And that is what our business is. And so when I'm giving you those examples because I'm just one little slice in this big pie.
Yeah.
Okay? But to think that in a period of 5 years, that we could do $70 million of sales, I think that's about right, of exotic wildlife.
It's incredible.
It was unthinkable.
Yeah.
No one would have ever imagined you could pull that off. I mean, it's...
No.
And you know what I like, and it's going to be straight up honest, is you're an open book. You're sitting here, we drove around in a buggy earlier, and you're answering questions just, well, what did we do this, what is this? Just like you said, here's the model. Take it, plug it in, and put it to work. And again, like you just mentioned, there's some deer breeders. I'm a deer breeder. And when I started in the deer breeding business, I would ask questions and get this look.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
What you want, and I'd be like, well, what am I missing here? Aren't we all working together?
People don't want to give away their secrets.
Yeah.
Look, if you have something to hide, you probably shouldn't be doing it. And in our business, we've made mistakes. There's things that we thought we were doing that would work that didn't work. There's things that we wanted to do that we didn't end up doing. And we've made some mistakes along the way. And I speak very openly about the mistakes that we've made as well as the successes that we've had. My personal belief about the wildlife industry is that the only way that this is going to be a really strong, robust industry, the only way that you're really going to attract real investment dollars is that the industry has to have a foundation that people can trust. And so I've used this example before in the past. When you're taking something and you're classifying it as an investment, there's 2 things you have to have, okay? One of them is you have to have a place to buy that you can absolutely depend on that you're being told the truth. Mm-hmm. When you go buy stocks and bonds and things like that, you get a prospectus, and the person selling it to you is required to be licensed. And they have all this regulatory requirements that they have to meet as it relates to disclosure, okay? You have to tell the whole truth. That's just the way that works. And so because of that foundation on the buying side, people walk into an investment and they believe that they're being told the truth. That's the expectation. That's what you expect to happen. That is the rule. Now, it's not to say there's not exceptions, but that's the rule. But the flip side is that if I buy something and I can't sell it, well, then it's not an investment.
Why buy it? Yeah.
I have to be able to sell it too. So there has to be a place where you can go, where you can sell this product that you bought and liquidate it, and you have to get the same benefit. You have to be able to trust that the place you're selling it, you're getting a fair deal.
Right.
And that was missing in the exotic wildlife industry. Those didn't exist. So if I was a landowner and I bought from people, I didn't know whether I was going to get the truth or not. Mm-hmm. I didn't know whether I was going to get any disclosure or not because nobody told me. If I said, hey, where did this come from? Over there.
Yeah.
Down the road.
We got it down the road there.
How long has it been on that trailer?
Yeah.
About as long as it took us to get it here.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could have been sitting there a week.
Yeah. And so you didn't get any real disclosure. Yeah. And so the minute that thing comes off the trailer, I had this conversation with a guy one time. And he explained to me, he said, the way this industry works is it's on the tail light warranty. The minute you see the tail lights leaving the gate, that's when your warranty ended.
It's done. That's right.
And the thing is that why?
Yeah.
Well, if you sold me something, why can't you stand behind it?
Yeah.
If you're the one that caught it and you're the one that brought it here and it's a
So
healthy, good
100%.
animal and it's worth me spending thousands of dollars on, why can't you tell me the story?
Right.
And so
And you're just the opposite because you're saying we want you to do well. Call me, I'll come buy your offspring.
well, it's not just that. If someone asks me where I got the animal, I'm going to tell them.
Yeah.
If they want to know where I bought it, I'll tell them where I bought it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. I had a girl one time. I bought some animals from this ranch in South Texas. And the girl that kind of runs it, it's her family's ranch, but she kind of runs it. Well, so I took these animals and I sold them to another guy. And he asked me where I got them. And I told him I bought them from so-and-so down at such and such. And about 2 hours later, I get a call. How could you possibly do that? I said, what? How could you buy my animals for X and then go sell them to him for more? I said, well, did you expect me to do it for free? You know, I mean, I've got to make some margin in some way or another. But my point is that I don't have any problem with saying we're going to make 30%.
Sure.
That's our gross margin, okay? Give or take, 30% is what we're averaging. And so why do I need to be ashamed of the fact that I make money on a deal? And why should I be afraid to say where I bought it from unless I'm afraid you're going to go and beat me out of the deal? Well, if I'm not doing a good enough job to get my customer to keep doing business with me, that's my fault.
Yeah.
If I'm not paying enough money for that animal and someone else will pay more, well, that's my fault. You know, if I sell something to somebody and I'm not willing to give them the whole story behind where the animal came from, that means I've got something to hide. Well, the reason I have something to hide is because I'm worried that someone's going to get over on me. Well, we do a good enough job, I'm not worried about it. You know, we do a good enough job that we work with landowners in a way where they are happy with what we offer them, and why would they want to go with somebody else?
Makes sense.
Yeah. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
You know, look, I want the foundation of this industry to be strong. I want people to look at this as an investment that they can rely on and they can depend on and they trust. Mother Nature is hard enough to work with. You know, dealing with misleading information or deception or a lack of information, that it doesn't have to be like that. It's not necessary. It's too easy to say this is how we did it and this is where it came from, and let's let Mother Nature do her deal. You know, that's a big enough risk to deal with. You know, I don't need to add to the risk by not being straightforward about what it is I'm selling.
Now, do you offer a warranty? I mean, or do you have the taillight warranty?
No, we offer a warranty. So everything we sell comes with an absolute, no questions asked, 1 week guarantee. We extend that warranty in many cases. In other words, somebody may say, look, I'll buy them, but I want a 1 month warranty because I know there's a storm coming in 2 weeks and I'm not going to take them today unless you warranty them. If I believe that they're going to make it through the storm, I'll say yes. If I don't believe they're going to make it through the storm, I shouldn't be delivering them.
Right.
I shouldn't be dropping them off.
Right.
You know, so our warranty is concrete at a week, but it's not static. We do make some movement in it, but it's never less than a week.
Well, and a lot of people really don't realize, but Leo and I get it just being in the deer business. A week is actually a long time.
That's a long time, yeah.
I'm going to sound terrible, but I'm not going to give somebody a week guarantee on my deer. Because deer are funny animals, and really they all are. They could go out there and, like we were talking about earlier, these animals that are raised to eat grass and stuff, you take them to the hill country where they're just rocks, well, they may not make it. And like you were saying, it's my responsibility to make sure they're going to a place where they can make it. But if a guy just comes to me and says, hey, I want this deer, this deer, this deer, load them up, let's go, well, then who am I to say, well, where you know, here's your warranty.
You're dealing with a little different animal, we'll say.
Sure.
Okay. My end game is that I need to go back there and buy all that production.
Right. So not only do you need that customer happy, you need that animal staying alive.
Sure.
That's
what I
for
was
your
saying.
benefit later.
That's my
And his
that's
benefit.
my factory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to
you're
make
just giving them some
sure
machinery.
I need to make sure that those animals do good, because a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, I make 30% on every one of them that I buy. So why would I not want to make sure that what I'm selling them is going to survive?
Somebody's successful with what they're doing.
Yeah, because
makes
I've got a
100%
long-term benefit. But going back to the term of a week is a long time. So capture myopathy is the single greatest risk when we're moving animals. And understanding capture myopathy and what it is and why it happens, I think is the key to being successful. If I'm moving animals, if I'm a guy that's brokering animals, if I'm a game trader, okay, then I need to understand capture myopathy and why it happens and what I can do to prevent it, okay? Because once it starts, it's over. You're gonna lose the animal. It's just how it is. And so capture myopathy is something that doesn't necessarily only last for a day or 24 hours or 4 days. Those are the most likely times you're going to see it, but it can go longer than that. We feel comfortable that at a week, we've pretty much gotten beyond capture myopathy at that point. But you know, there is another factor that comes into this, the recommendations that we make. You know, we're dealing with ruminants as a general rule. And a rumen is a really delicate, fickle digestive model, we'll just say. So when animals go through a drastic change in their rumen, the downfall is they don't extract nutrients, even though they're eating.
Right.
So Nilgai, we talked about that. So you could take these Nilgai from the King Ranch and take them to the hill country, and you see them eating. They're over there eating. They look fat as a house, but there's an imbalance in the rumen. And as the result of that, they're not extracting any nutrients. And so that animal's starving to death as it's eating.
Right.
As it's eating, it's starving to death. And so these are things that I personally feel a responsibility for when I'm selling something, because I have the knowledge. If I've got the knowledge and I'm not sharing the knowledge, and I'm only selling the product because I want to sell the product, the shame on me.
Yeah.
That's my bad, you know? But I do think that lack of knowledge is the core problem. And I think that the more that this industry grows and develops, the more knowledge base there's going to be, and I think the better job people are going to do. I don't think people are doing things because they're malicious. I think people are doing things because there's just not a lot of teachers. There's not a lot of teachers. There's not a huge knowledge base saying, hey, you know, this is what causes capture myopathy. You know, it's 95 degrees and we've been chasing these animals for 3 hours and they've run 472 miles.
We just netted them.
Let's go get one. Let's go get one more.
One more.
You know, no problem. That one didn't run that much. You know,
and throw them in a hot trailer.
Well, never mind the 3 that are already on the ground in the trailer. You know what I mean? So
been waiting.
So it's just there's a knowledge base that's needed. Ethics work themselves out. You know, as a general rule, people are good, and as a general rule, people want to do a good job. But a lack of knowledge is something that you can't overcome unless you get knowledge. And I think that's what we're seeing developing in the exotic wildlife industry, is there is a more robust stream of knowledge that is coming into the industry through people from Africa, through Texas A&M is giving us some more resources. There's just more and more and more showing up that's helping us get better and better and better at what we do. So the warranty, you know, for us, this comes back to capitalism. You know, I give a warranty because it sets me aside from everybody else. I'll share a dirty little secret with you. All right? I'll share a dirty little secret.
All right.
So out of, let's just say $70 million, okay? If I had to just take a wild guess on the warranty, just a wild guess, we've probably warrantied $350,000 worth of animals.
That's really a drop in the bucket for that kind of money.
It is.
Especially when you're dealing with wild animals.
And you're dealing with animals that may be $100,000 a piece.
That's a good point.
It's not a huge number. We very, very, very rarely have to warranty an animal. Very rarely.
But you do it if you have to. You stand behind your word.
Well, but here's what happens because of the warranty. My guys don't go and run animals into the dirt. They just don't do it
because they know
because we're paying for it.
Right.
So they quit. They quit before it's too hot. They quit. They don't push it that extra distance. They stop way before the line because the line it's costly. It's painful. It hurts.
And it's
a good point.
It's definitely a finicky line too. All these animals stress so easily. And
So you know, it's just the warranty element of it is. It really puts all the risk on our back. You know, if we carry all the risk when we sell something to someone, it makes them have more confidence in the market. That's really what it does.
Yeah.
When we go buy animals, we carry all the risk. If something dies, we pay for it. Period. Because the animal wouldn't be dead if my helicopter wasn't there.
Yeah.
It'd still be walking around.
Yeah.
So we killed it. Whether we threw a net on it or not, whether we darted it or not, doesn't matter. If it ran into a fence, I own it.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to the processor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Now, with your, this is a relatively short time you've been doing this. You said 5-6 years. You've gathered a wealth of knowledge, and you have such a vast team of people. It seems like a lot of people probably come to you for advice. That's you said you started a consulting business now to help people with their ranches. That I know what you feed here, and to me, that really kind of puts a sense of ease over me because I feed the same thing. Leo feeds the same. We all feed Record Rack. And I asked you about this earlier before the camera was running, but you said that the feed's not really your thing. You write the check for it, but that's not your forte in the animals. But the knowledgeable people you have working for you, they've chose to use Record Rack for an obvious reason, I would think. I mean,
And one thing you did mention, you said you have 2 different feeds for.
oh yeah,
one
when
for
we were
your
in the
grazers,
pasture, we had
one
talked
for
about
your
you have like
grazers,
a yeah.
and one for your browsers, which I think is cool. I mean, I really do, because I really do get into the feed. You know, we both do, because we want our animals to do well. You know, obviously, and explain kind of how I guess Kevin and y'all all got together and said, hey, why are we feeding this to the same all the animals when it's not? They're not the same. I'm assuming.
Well, you know, look, there's some basic information I think that people generally know. Okay, so sheep are not going to do well with copper.
Right.
A bongo is going to die if you don't give it copper. Okay,
I know that.
bongo they need lots of copper.
Right.
Okay, but virtually all of these animals need copper to some degree. Okay, even sheep need a little bit. But
Right.
so a browser, okay, that's eating browse is going to need high protein content.
Right.
Whereas a grazer, you know, they're 5%. 5% protein is enough for a grazer. They don't need this huge,
Right.
protein load. And so when you're looking at animals that have completely different diets, just because I throw them all in the same box, that doesn't mean that they don't still have different diets. You know, if I don't have grass on the ground, or if I don't have browse, if I throw browsers in an area with no browse, I got problems. If I throw grazers in an area with no grass, I've got problems.
Right.
And you can't just fix that with feed.
Right.
You have to
Sure.
you have to employ land management as well. But you know, there's things about feed that to me they're far more in depth as it relates to science than what I'm going to go get in the middle of. There are nutritionists that specialize in this. You know, as we talked about the rumen. The rumen is a really delicate device, you know, that's processing plants and turning it into energy and all these other nutrients. And so I'm not going to go become a nutritionist.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I find it extremely boring.
You have to trust.
But I do understand basic management.
Right.
You cannot expect a large group of animals to live strictly on feed.
Right.
You can't. It's supplement.
Right.
It's not primary.
No, that's
it's
exactly what it
it's
is.
supplement.
Absolutely.
And so there are species, I guess, that you can get away with that with, but most of the things that we raise don't. And so we feed coastal, we feed alfalfa, we have several different blends of feed that we use. The kangaroos get a totally different feed than everything else. And so I trust people that know how to do this. And I know that Brian and Kevin, they've gotten with people from Record Rack, and you guys have worked things out on how to make sure that we're feeding what we need to feed. I've got it's interesting we're talking about this. I've got an issue right now where I've got some Impala that we're not getting production out of them like we should be. And we've tried all these different experiments, and I'm 100% convinced that it's feed. I think there is an issue with feed that's causing it. And so this is another one of those things about knowledge and education. You know, reproduction is affected by what they're eating.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things I really like about the people that we work with from a feed standpoint is that when we bring a problem and say, hey, look, here's a problem we're having with reproduction, or here's a problem we're having with this, there's somebody that's really smart that shows up
That goes-
and says, well, let's dig into that.
Let's look.
You know, let's test the feed.
Yeah,
Let's go
that-
look at the animals.
that
Let's
isn't bored
see
by
if
it.
there's
Yeah.
some, you know, look, we're dealing with 70 different species.
Sure.
They're not all the same.
No.
So let's look at Impala, for example, and let's see, is there something about the feed that we're giving them that's causing an insulin issue?
Right.
You know, is there something that's creating these problems that are causing the dietary or the reproduction issues? And the answer is more than likely, yes.
likely, yeah.
Yeah, more than likely, yes. And so this is something that I really rely on our staff, but more importantly, I rely on our providers, the people that are
Right.
providing us feed. When we report a problem, that they delve in and they do whatever it takes to figure it
get it
out.
done.
That's too cool.
That is cool.
You know, because I mean, look, we're still in the process of experimentation.
Of learning.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have the team from both internally and externally all working towards solving problems, all you're doing is throwing the same solution at
Right.
a problem without
Expecting
making
a different,
Yeah,
a
it's
different outcome.
yeah, it's just
the
crazy, you know?
insanity.
Yeah.
It is,
The
it's
definition
crazy.
of insanity. Yeah.
So yeah, you know, we are really pleased with the feed, and we're really pleased with the way our animals look, and everybody's healthy and happy.
they look
and
great.
You know,
They really do.
And
we're
your
pleased.
feed comes from Freer Feed
Yes, that's correct.
and out of Freer.
Yeah, we buy
And
much
I
feed
mean,
from
but you
them.
buy it comes in truckloads. I mean, 18-wheelers, literally.
We're buying a lot of we buy a lot of feed.
Yeah.
Do you have any? I mean, do you even have an idea how much feed you go through a year?
I'm sure it's north of $1 million. I mean, I
I would
don't know.
think so.
I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's somewhere between $1 million and $2 million.
Yeah,
worth of
just
feed.
shy of 2 bazillion pounds a year.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I have no idea from
Well,
a
there's a
poundage
lot of
standpoint.
Right.
But, you know, we get 18-wheelers worth of alfalfa all the time, and
Yeah.
we're constantly
Alfalfa's
buying
the
round
same
bales.
thing.
And,
Yeah, round
you know,
bales and-
we've got pallets of other feed coming in.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, I don't know. Honestly,
Yeah, just-
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
So-
No, I didn't think that you did, because I mean, how could you? You're feeding so much, but obviously you're involved in your hands and
Well, that's
everything
what
on all the
I'm
ranches.
saying.
But that's why you
Yeah.
have a good team working
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
So that's super cool.
And I don't know where we're at on time, but speaking of end product, you've got a big event coming up.
Big.
We do, yeah, we do. We've
Big
got a
event.
big event. This is our second auction. You know, I kind of envisioned doing this several years ago when I was looking at these auctions that existed in Africa. And, you know, obviously there have been auctions here in Texas.
Right.
These auctions are historically all consignment auctions, but the idea of one ranch having enough production to have an auction
to a
all by
production
themselves,
Pretty crazy.
that's a pretty lofty goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're easily able to do it at this point. And so we have this coming weekend, May 15th and 16th. On the 15th, Saturday, we're having a crawfish boil and a barbecue, and Jared Birmingham's going to play music, and we're going to have a hell of a good time in Mountain Home at our ranch. And that's it. That's it.
Barbecue and crawfish.
Yeah.
That's at 254 Paradigm Ranch Road in Mountain Home, Texas. We're right off Highway 41 and I-10.
And I would imagine you can ask anybody around Mountain Home, Kerrville, hey, where's Wildlife Partners? And they go that way.
They'll be able to tell you, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then Sunday at 1 o'clock, we're having a live auction. Now, none of the animals are run through a ring. It's
Right,
all
right,
done through pictures or videos.
Video, yeah.
And our catalog is online at dvauctions.com. You can actually log on to DV. You can bid online at our last sale. We sold 100 lots. It was I think we did about 1.7 million. At that sale. And it was really funny. You guys will laugh about this. So this was right in the middle of COVID. This was in October. So here we are, the idiots. We're going to be the guinea pigs. We're going to have a sale in the middle of COVID, just see how it goes. And not only that, we're going to do it in Pettis, Texas.
Yeah.
And so here we are. We've got our auction starting out, and I'm up there on the podium, and I look out in the crowd, and there's about 50 people in the crowd. 25 of them are ours. I'm thinking, oh my God, what did we get ourselves into? Well, there were like 350 people online.
Wow.
And so it was really amazing to see this whole thing come together. Our team did an amazing job, and so I'm extremely optimistic about the auction that we have coming up.
Yep.
We've got 2 female giraffe in the auction. We've got sable and kudu and grants and impala. Camels, you know, we've got every single, we have some representation, I think, of just about, we don't have every species, but we've got hog deer and we've got Nile lechwe and we've got black wildebeest and, you know, I
You
think.
even have some of the kind of common exotics, some fallow deer in there, right?
Well, the fallow deer that we have in there are kind of these genetic superior fallow,
Right.
and I think we've got
Right,
2
right.
of them in there, and so they're kind of an anomaly as it relates to a common. I mean, they're going to go for big money more than
Right.
likely,
Right,
but
right.
you know, look, I personally think this is the best lot group of exotic wildlife ever put together. It's better than the first auction we had. You know, we're getting a lot of response. I expect we're going to have a good crowd, and I expect there's going to be a ton of people online. So, it's, you know, it's really it's extremely rewarding to see our staff take this idea, organize the whole thing, run with it. I get to sit back and watch, sit here and do a podcast with you guys rather than they're meddling with the
they're
auction.
running around crazy.
Yeah, they're getting it done, and I'm sitting here, you know, shooting the breeze with you guys. And I'm going to show up on Saturday and have a great time, and on Sunday, you know, I'm going to be the showman and do my little pitch there at the sale. And it's just, I got to tell you, I knew we'd get here when we started. I knew we would get here, and I think I have a pretty good idea where this is going long term. But it really is a very rewarding feeling to look at this event and to know we produced all those animals.
Right.
And we're going to not only produce them, but we're going to catch them, and we're going to deliver them,
Right.
and we're going to warranty them, and we're going to get all these new customers as the result of doing this. And
And you can help, and you will help people with consulting
we
as to, you know, how to feed, where to set up, do this, do that, set your ranch up. And
So we not only help with setup and structure, but the other thing that we're offering now is that for absentee landowners, which is the bulk of our customers, okay? Look, there are Mother Nature risk, there are ignorant risk, and then there are theft risks,
Sure.
okay?
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
if you own exotic wildlife and you're not aware of the theft risk, then you're not paying very good attention, okay? So one of the things that we offer is that on a monthly basis, we will do an inspection. So we're hiring veterans to go out and do these inspections. And essentially what these guys are doing is they go out to a ranch, they spend the entire day there looking at animals, counting offspring, checking the fence line for holes, looking to make sure there's nothing coming under the fence, looking at the feeders to see if there's any mold, looking at the water troughs to see if you got leaks in your water trough, looking at the hay to see if you got any moldy, nasty hay anywhere around, looking for any dead animals. And they're photographing and videoing all of this. And then what we end up doing is we're sending a report to the landowner of everything we saw, along with a list of action items.
Right.
So here's now a list for your employee to go do that we're going to check on next month to see if they got done.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience of, it's deer season. You go out to the ranch, you get into the blind, you're sitting in the blind, the sun's coming up. Right as the sun comes up, you expect that feeder to go off.
Nothing.
And nothing.
oh man, that makes me so mad.
Nothing, right? So,
Yeah.
so the fact is that if you're a landowner, you have shown up at your ranch and you've been hot-headed and you've been pissed and you've gone, what in the world is going on? Well, for a monthly fee, we will have a veteran on your property for an entire day checking on everything once a month.
Yep.
And you get a written report, an emailed report with photographs and everything. And when we go back next week or next month, you know, and we look at these action items as to whether they got done or not, we're also looking to make sure that your animals are still there. And so it's an independent set of eyeballs watching your asset.
Right.
And this fee, it runs $3,500 to $5,000 a month. It just depends on how big the ranch is. You know, if you're talking 5,000 acres and it's going to take us, you know, an extraordinary amount of time to get through the whole property, it's going to be on the $5,000 side. You know, if it's a smaller property and we can get through the whole thing in half a day or 3/4 of a day, with drive time, it's a day. You know, it's $3,000, $3,500, something like that. But you know, when you're talking about $35,000 or $40,000 a year to have this independent set of eyeballs reviewing everything, and you've got $1 million worth of animals, it's kind of a no-brainer,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So we've had a great reception on this, by the way. It's
Right.
been, I think that by the end of this year, we'll have somewhere between 60 and 70 ranches on contract doing this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I want to touch on the auction again. That's on DV Auctions.
That's right.
I don't even know what David V. What would V be? I don't know.
Daily Vitamin, Daily
Yeah,
Vitamin.
DailyVitaminAuctions.com.
Yeah, dvauction.com. It's auction, not auctions.
Oh, auction.
dvauction.com, that's right.
Or I assume they can go to Wildlife Partners.
They can go to WLPauction.com and they can register there. That won't get you online bidding. That will just tell
Right.
us you're going to show up.
Okay, in person.
Yeah.
But okay.
And of course, Facebook. They can go to your Facebook, send a message if they need a catalogs are on. Actually, as we were sitting here earlier, I got a text from Wildlife Partners about, hey, the auction and the catalog, and you know,
Yeah.
my phone, because I'm on your text list. you
That's
know,
right.
So
Yeah, that's
Yep.
correct. So,
Super cool.
yeah, hope you guys are going to make it and come eat some
We'll try.
bugs and
The-
drink
the-
some
yeah.
beer and have a good time.
yes, sir.
Well, don't threaten me with a good time.
Come on.
And that sounds good. Well, Brian, I think we're gonna shut this off now, and we're gonna make you take us around the ranch probably one more time, because I can't get enough of these things. And I'm sure my kids are gonna want me to get some more video of the kangaroos.
Kangaroos
that.
are cool.
Yeah.
They really were.
Well, guys, we appreciate you joining. Brian, super nice guy. What he's doing here is amazing.
Really
the things he talked about now, I didn't even know. It blew my mind. And I'm sure Leo and I are going to be talking about this for weeks on end. The place is awesome. He says that he's an open book, and he is. He blew me
means
away
it.
with his
Yeah, he
honesty.
means it. Yeah.
Put me in my place several times, which I love. And he claims that anybody's welcome to, well, maybe not anybody, but if you're truly interested in exotic animals, hit up Brian. He's a super nice guy. He's going to show you around, teach you some things, and you're not going to miss out. I mean, it's going to be awesome. I promise you. And we want to thank Record Rack for making this all possible. Record Rack did reach out to Brian and said, hey, we got a couple of hillbillies that want to come talk to you. And here we are. They made it happen. Freer Feed and Ranch.
Freer Feed, yep.
We appreciate you guys, and we know that you offer a great product and great service. But from now, I said we go out there and look at some more critters.
Yes, sir.
You ready, Brian?
Let's do it.
Let's go.